Welcome back to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me back.
So, if you have been with us for the last few sessions, you know we have been wading through some seriously heavy lifting.
Oh, absolutely.
We've been deep in part one of the source material. We've been cleaning the lens, building the architecture of the self, and honestly, it's been a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of auditing, a lot of checking boxes, and just a lot of intellectual heavy lifting overall.
It really has. And, that is entirely by design. You cannot renovate a house without inspecting the foundation first.
Right.
You have to go down to the basement with a flashlight and actually look at the cracks before you can pick out the curtains.
Yeah, that makes sense. But today feels different. I was reading through chapters 19 to 24 last night, which is our focus for this deep dive, by the way, and I got this distinct feeling that we are standing on a cliff edge.
Oh, I like that description.
Yeah,
Right.
we are done with the inspection, we are done with the spreadsheets, and now the text is asking us to do something that, quite frankly, feels a little terrifying.
It is terrifying.
It's asking us to actually live in the house we've been building.
That is the perfect way to frame it. Today really is the pivot point. If I had to define the mission for this specific deep dive, it is to bridge the gap between auditing your life and actually inhabiting it.
Inhabiting it, right.
We are moving from the safety of data, your fitness tracker, your bank statement, your curated social media feed, into the messy, chaotic, high-definition reality of being alive.
The actual experience of it.
Exactly. And eventually, by the end of this deep dive, we're going to cross the threshold into what the author calls the unseen force of part 2.
Okay, before we get to the force, which, sounds very majestic and mysterious, we need to talk about where most of us are stuck right now.
Right, the starting line.
The text introduces this concept of the user interface versus the operating system, and I have to say this metaphor really struck a chord with me.
It's incredibly relevant.
I realized I spend about probably 95% of my waking life staring at the desktop icons of my brain, and literally zero time looking at the code running underneath.
You and everyone else, it is the modern condition.
It really is.
Let's really unpack this because it's the root of the problem the author is trying to solve in Chapter 19. Think about your average Tuesday. You wake up. What's the first thing you do?
Grab the phone.
Right. You check the weather, that's data. You check your email, that's tasks. You check your sleep score, that's metrics.
Yeah, I definitely check the sleep score before I even decide if I feel rested.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are navigating a dashboard. The text argues that this user interface, the thoughts, the to-do lists, the anxieties, the schedules, is bright, loud, and designed to grab your attention. But it isn't the system, it's just the display layer.
It's like we're frantically clicking icons on a desktop hoping to change how the computer works, but we have no idea what the actual machinery is doing.
Precisely. And the danger here, which the text highlights quite starkly, is disembodiment.
Disembodied.
Yes. Modern life is essentially a highly funded training camp for abandoning the body.
Wow.
We are conditioned from a very young age to trust mental processing the UI over physical sensation. We live in thoughts about life rather than life itself.
There's that great line in the text about the traveler, our recurring protagonist throughout this book.
The traveler.
They realized they had turned their spiritual practice into just another mental project. They were analyzing their alignment, journaling their insights, tracking their mindfulness minutes, but they had completely left their body behind.
They intellectualized it.
Yeah. They were basically a brain in a jar thinking about being a body.
Yes. The traveler represents the trap of the intellectual achiever, which I think describes a lot of our listeners. They mistake the map for the territory.
Right.
They think if they analyze the map of happiness well enough, they'll feel happy. But the body, the operating system, is where the code actually runs. So this section of the source material initiates an update.
An OS update.
Exactly. And this update isn't about learning more concepts. It's about reestablishing contact with the physical reality of being alive.
Okay, but how do we know if we're stuck in the UI? Because I think a lot of people listening, myself included, would say, well, I'm pretty in touch with myself. I work out. I track my spending. I'm a responsible adult.
And that is exactly where the trap lies. The text calls these the external audits.
The audits.
Right. We use them to prove we are alive, but often they're just more sophisticated ways of dissociating. We are outsourcing our knowing to external devices.
Which brings us to Chapter 20.
Right. The source material breaks this down into 3 very relatable, very modern traps: the fitness tracker, the bank statement, and the social media feed.
Let's start with the fitness tracker. I feel personally attacked by this section, honestly.
Well, people do.
I mean, I love my rings, I love my step count. I feel a legitimate sense of failure if I don't get that little buzz on my wrist at the end of the day. But the text calls this the trap of external metrics.
It does. And look, it's not saying fitness trackers are evil. It's not saying you should throw your smartwatch in the river.
Good, because I just bought a new one.
It's asking a fundamental question. Who is the authority? A fitness tracker measures everything: heart rate variability, cadence, sleep quality, calories burned. It has all the data,
Tons of data.
but it understands nothing.
Right. It has the data, but zero wisdom. It doesn't know how I actually feel.
Correct. The source provides this fascinating comparison table between exercise, which it defines as disembodied, and movement, which is embodied.
That's a huge distinction.
It is a crucial distinction that I think we need to spend some time on because the culture conflates the two entirely.
Yeah, let's go through that table, because I think
Yeah.
most people use those words completely interchangeably. I certainly do.
So exercise, in the context of this book, is goal-focused. It's about calories, metrics, hitting a specific target.
Like burning 500 calories on the Stairmaster.
Exactly. The orientation is external. You're looking at the mirror to check your form, or you're staring at the screen on the treadmill, or you're checking your watch every 2 minutes. It's performance-driven. Am I doing it right? It is efficient.
And the phrase used in the text is mind leads, body follows.
Exactly. The body is just a tool the mind is using to get a result. The text uses a pretty blunt metaphor here. It says the body is a donkey.
A donkey.
Yes. You are the rider whipping the donkey to get to the destination, which is usually being thinner or being stronger or living longer. You're just transporting the body.
That sounds miserable when you put it that way. So what is movement then?
Movement is process-focused. It's about sensation. The orientation is internal to your breath, your attention, feeling the ground beneath your feet, feeling the heat build up in your muscles.
So it's not about the end goal.
No, it's presence-driven. The question changes from, am I doing this right, to what is here right now? In this mode, the body leads.
The text gives this vivid example of running on a treadmill for an hour, and the person is listening to a podcast, planning their day, worrying about an email they have to send. I call this the treadmill zombie mode.
Right. Let's really look at that scenario. Physically, your legs are moving at 6 miles per hour. You are definitely burning calories. But mentally and energetically,
You're not even in the room.
exactly. You are in a meeting. Then you are in the kitchen planning dinner. Then you are replaying an argument from 3 years ago. You essentially treated your body like a piece of luggage that you dragged for 5 miles while your mind was somewhere else entirely.
That is a haunting image, transported like luggage. It makes me feel a little sad for my body, honestly.
It should. Because you arrive at the end of the hour with a cardiovascular benefit, sure. But you have zero embodiment benefit.
Not at all.
In fact, the text argues you actually practiced dissociation for an hour. You practiced ignoring the signal of the operating system in favor of the noise of the user interface.
You trained yourself to not feel your body while your body was working its hardest.
Precisely. So the shift the text asks for isn't to stop exercising. It's to inhabit the movement, to actually feel the foot strike the belt of the treadmill, to feel the expansion of the lungs, to stop outsourcing the experience to a distraction and actually be there for the run.
It sounds so simple, but try doing it. Try running for 10 minutes without music, without a podcast, just feeling the sensation of running. It is incredibly difficult for the modern mind.
Because there is no distraction from the discomfort.
Right. There's just you and the effort.
Exactly. It's about closing that gap. When the body runs, the mind runs. When the body lifts, the mind lifts.
Okay, so that's the body. Now let's talk about the wallet, the bank statement. This is the second external audit we use to measure our lives.
A bank statement. The source material reframes this beautifully. It suggests we stop looking at the bank statement as a math problem or a report card and start looking at it as an honest autobiography.
An honest autobiography, I love that. Because numbers really don't lie. You can say you value your health, you can tell all your friends you value education and growth, but if your bank statement shows $300 a month at the liquor store and $0 on books or good food,
then the autobiography tells a very different story from the one you're pitching to the world.
yeah, it calls you out.
It does. And the text dives deep into the concept of reactive spending. This is a huge part of the auditing phase. Reactive spending is driven by avoidance. It's anxiety management. We spend money to manage discomfort in the present moment.
It's the, oh, I had a bad day, I deserve this purchase. Or the, I feel insecure about this meeting, so I'm going to buy this new outfit to make me feel prepared purchase.
Exactly. Let's trace the mechanism of that. You have a stressful day at work, your
Yeah.
cortisol is up, you feel a literal glitch in the operating system, tension in your shoulders, a knot in your stomach, generalized anxiety.
The check engine light is on.
Right. But instead of addressing the glitch by breathing, resting, or actually processing the emotion, you look to the user interface for a quick patch.
A software patch.
Yes. The UI says, if I buy the expensive takeout, I don't have to cook and I'll feel comforted. Or if I buy the new gadget online at 11 p.m., I'll feel a rush of excitement instead of this draining exhaustion.
So we're literally paying money to numb out the signal from our own operating system.
Yes. And the text argues that this type of spending always comes at the cost of the future. It introduces this really powerful concept of funding the future self.
Funding the future self.
Every purchase of a vote. It either funds the person you are running away from, or it funds the person you are becoming.
That's a heavy question to ask yourself before buying a latte. Am I funding the person I'm running from?
It is heavy, but it cuts right through the noise. It's about moving from a scarcity OS, which is based on fear and a constant feeling of not enough, to a logic of permission.
How does that shift work?
The question shifts from, what can I afford right now, to what am I allowed to build for myself?
And the text explicitly links money to the 40P system we've discussed in previous deep dives. It says money is the most concrete expression of your target or direction.
Yes, it is the ultimate grounding metric. If your stated target is deep connection with your family, but your spending is entirely focused on isolated entertainment and conveniences that keep you in separate rooms, there is a massive misalignment.
Money shows you the truth.
The bank statement reveals that misalignment faster than any journal entry ever could. It's a diagnostic tool for your soul, really. The audit isn't there to make you feel guilty. It's just to show you where your energy is actually going versus where you say you want it to go.
Okay, moving to the third audit, the social media feed. The text calls this the ad blocker for the soul.
Or the ad blocker for the nervous system. This is where the embodiment concept gets really interesting, almost political in a sense.
Right, the text brings up how platforms manipulate us. Just as a reminder for you listening, we aren't taking sides on the specific cultural issues mentioned in the source, just unpacking the mechanics of how the text says these platforms operate on us.
Exactly. The expert in the text explains that once you become embodied, once you actually inhabit your nervous system, you start to see the culture's manipulation with crystal clarity.
You see the matrix.
Essentially, yes. Think about how the attention economy works. It actually relies on you being slightly dissociated. It relies on you seeking a dopamine hit to escape the present moment.
You scroll, you get a little hit.
Right. You see something that makes you angry, which spikes your cortisol. Then you scroll again and see something that makes you laugh, hitting your dopamine. It's a constant cycle of activation, then seeking, then more activation.
It keeps you trapped in a loop.
But here is the key point. When you are disembodied, you don't notice the toll it takes on your physical being. You just feel a vague sense of stress or brain fog at the end of the day. And what do? You keep scrolling to try and get rid of the fog, which only creates more fog.
It's a vicious cycle. But
Yeah.
what happens when you're embodied?
When you're embodied, you feel the dissonance immediately. You open the app, you see a clickbait headline perfectly designed by an algorithm to enrage you, and you feel it physically.
In your body.
Yes. You feel your chest tighten. You feel your breathing become shallow. You feel your jaw clench.
It physically hurts to consume the junk content.
It does. And because you feel it, you naturally stop consuming it. You say, ouch, no, and you close the app. That is what the text calls the embodied disruption.
Embodied disruption.
Embodied people are a massive problem for the system because they have an internal authority. The feed screams, be scared, be outraged, buy this to feel safe. But the body says, I am safe, I am breathing, I am here, this is just noise. The body overrules the algorithm.
Wow. Okay, so we've audited the fitness tracker, the bank account, and the social feed. We realize we've been living entirely in the interface, completely disconnected from the machine. Now, how do we actually fix it? The text transitions here to the Symphony of Embodiment, which covers chapters 21 and 22.
Yes, this is where we stop taking the machine apart and finally start playing it.
This is the move from parts to the whole. We stop looking at the isolated metrics and start playing the music. And the text uses this beautiful metaphor of the orchestra to explain the stages of embodiment.
I really love this breakdown. It starts with the steadfast drum.
That is chapter 21, right?
Yes, the drum is the body. It's the rhythm section. Before you can play a soaring melody, you have to be able to hold a basic beat. This stage is about learning the notation of sensation.
The notation of sensation.
Because most of us are completely illiterate when it comes to our own bodies. We only notice our body when it screams at us like severe pain, extreme hunger, total exhaustion.
We treat it like a car that we completely ignore until the check engine light is flashing red and the engine is smoking.
Exactly. Learning the drum means learning to hear the whispers before they become screams.
Give me an example of that.
Well, can you feel the temperature difference between your left hand and your right hand right now?
Oh, wow. I have to really focus to do that.
Right. Can you feel the tension in your jaw before it becomes a full-blown tension headache? Can you feel the specific texture of your socks against your feet? This is sensory literacy. You are learning the basic language of your own hardware.
And then chapter 22 is the symphony.
That's when the melody starts to actually align with the body's rhythm. It's applying the language you just learned. It's about creative flow and intuition.
Mind and body working together.
Right. This is where we get the distinction between just knowing the notes on a page and actually playing the instrument fluidly. The mind isn't fighting the body anymore. It's harmonizing with it.
And finally, chapter 23, the resonance.
Improvisation. This is the ultimate goal. You are no longer playing the instrument. You are the music.
You aren't practicing embodiment anymore.
No, you are simply living embodied. The rigid separation between me and my body completely dissolves.
And this leads to a point the text makes that I think is so critical, the myth of practice.
Yes, this is a huge trap many learners fall into.
I know I do.
We think embodiment happens exclusively on the yoga mat or the meditation cushion. We think, okay, I did my 20 minutes of deep breathing mindfulness, so I'm done. Now I can go back to being a stressed out, disembodied maniac for the remaining 23 hours of the day.
Check the docs. I did the spiritual thing. Moving on.
Exactly. But the source material is adamant about this. The goal isn't to be embodied during practice sessions. The goal is to be embodied while living.
While doing the dishes at 8 p.m. on a Wednesday.
Yes, while arguing with your partner, while grieving a loss, while sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic, while enduring a boring corporate meeting.
That's the real test.
The text defines integration not as some final destination where you are perfectly zen all the time, because that's impossible, but as a return.
A return.
Yes, you will drift. You will get lost in your head. You will get triggered and reactive. Integration is simply the act of noticing that drift and consciously re-entering the home of the body again and again.
Re-entering the home of the body. I really like that phrasing. It feels less like another exhausting task on my to-do list and more like a relief, like showing hospitality toward yourself.
It is a relief.
Yeah.
Because the alternative is being homeless in your own life. You are always hovering just above the present moment, never fully inside it.
So let's talk about what this actually looks like in practice.
Yeah.
Section 3 covers the embodied resonance from chapter 23, and the text describes the traveler 3 months into this process.
And I deeply appreciate the honesty of the text here. It doesn't paint some fake picture of instant blissful enlightenment.
Not at all.
3 months in, the traveler's experiencing what the text calls grinding friction, mixed with sudden breakthroughs. It's messy.
Why is it so messy?
Because when you start to wake up the body, you don't just feel the good stuff, you feel everything.
Oh.
You feel how incredibly uncomfortable your office chair really is. You feel how aggressive the fluorescent lights in your kitchen are. You feel the deep sadness you've been successfully repressing with endless Netflix binges.
It all comes to the surface. There's this specific scene the author describes the kitchen moment. The traveler is just standing there with a coffee mug. A very mundane, boring setting.
But the realization they have is profound. They realize the boundary between self and experience has become porous, permeable.
What does that mean, practically speaking, for you listening?
It means they aren't in here, inside their head, looking at the coffee out there. They are fully participating in the sensory experience of the coffee. They feel the exact warmth of the ceramic against their palms. They notice the specific angle of the morning light in the room. They smell the roast.
The separation just dissolves?
Yes, it's a moment of non-duality, but it's not accessed on a remote mountaintop retreat. It's accessed through a cheap ceramic mug in a messy kitchen.
And then we get the subway commute example. This was the one that really clicked for me regarding the difference between before integration and after integration.
The subway commute is the perfect laboratory for this concept.
It really is.
Before integration, the strategy is pure survival. Headphones in. Dissociate completely. Treat the body like luggage. Just get me out of here. You stare at your phone screen or the dirty floor. The entire goal is to reduce sensory input.
I think literally everyone listening has done exactly that. Just let me get to work without having to deal with the reality of humanity.
It's a very normal defense mechanism. But after integration, the traveler takes the headphones out.
Bold move on a crowded subway.
Very bold. But look at what happens. They notice the specific humanity of the strangers around them. The text calls it a 4K, full-spectrum connection to reality.
Everything is in high definition.
Instead of a low-resolution, filtered, numbed-out experience, they are getting the raw, high-fidelity feed of life. They smell the stale underground air, but they don't recoil in disgust. They just notice it as a sensation. They see the deep exhaustion on a commuter's face and feel empathy instead of annoyance. They are actually there.
And it's not just about noticing random strangers. It impacts close relationships, too. There's the example of the friend.
Yes, this is what the text calls relational resonance. The traveler meets a friend for coffee. The friend sits down and says the standard social script, "I'm fine."
Which, let's be honest, usually means I am definitely not fine.
Usually, yes. But before integration, we just process the literal words. Oh, they said they're fine. Good.
Yeah.
That's easy. We accept the surface data because we're listening purely with our cognitive mind, the user interface. We don't want to dig deeper.
But the embodied traveler, what do?
The embodied traveler isn't listening with just their ears. They're listening with their entire nervous system. This is what neuroscientists call neuroception.
Neuroception.
They see the heavy, slumped body language. They feel the subtle tension in the air. Listening changes from a cognitive function processing vocabulary to a full body function. They receive the complete broadcast.
And because they receive the full broadcast, they can respond to the actual truth of the moment, not the fake script.
Exactly.
They can say, you say you're fine, but you look exhausted. You look like you're carrying the weight of the world right now.
Which deepens the connection immediately. It cuts right through the social nonsense. And this brings us right back to that ad blocker concept we touched on earlier. The text revisits it here with a lot more depth.
Yeah, how does the ad blocker apply to relationships and daily choices once you reach this resonance stage?
Well, when you are fully embodied, you naturally filter out inputs that bypass natural feedback loops. You don't need intense willpower to avoid junk food or junk content or even junk interactions with toxic people.
You don't have to force yourself.
No. You avoid them because you can feel the dissonance and the harm immediately in your tissues.
It's like touching a hot stove. You don't need a complex rule book to tell you not to keep your hand on the burner. Your body tells you instantly.
Exactly. Disembodiment numbs us to the heat of the stove. We eat the terrible junk food and completely ignore the lethargy that follows. We scroll the rage bait feed and ignore the spike in our anxiety. Embodiment brings the raw sensation back, so we naturally, effortlessly pull away from what harms us.
That's a profound shift.
It transforms discipline, which is forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do, into wisdom, which is simply responding accurately to reality.
So we've integrated the body, we're hearing the symphony, we're navigating the subway, and our closest relationships with this entirely new resonance. Now we reach the bridge. Section 4. The Threshold of the Invisible. Chapter 24.
This is the major pivot point of the entire source material.
The host announces the transition to part 2. We have built the architecture of self, we've tuned the instrument, now we enter the unseen force.
It starts with a question. The text places the traveler awake in their house at 3 a.m.
The classic hour of existential reckoning. The witching hour.
It's always 3 a.m.
Always. And
Yeah.
sitting there in the quiet, they ask, what animates?
What animates? It's the ultimate question. The body is the vessel. Awareness is the light. But what is the electricity?
What's powering the whole thing?
Right. What makes your heart beat thousands of times a day without you ever telling it to? What precisely heals the paper cut on your finger without your conscious supervision? You aren't doing that. It's happening to you.
The text uses a new metaphor here to explain this transition, the concert hall.
Yes. If part 1 was all about learning the instrument, the body and the mind, part 2 is about understanding the concert hall itself.
The space where the music happens.
Exactly. We need to understand the acoustic architecture and the invisible field in which the music plays. You can be the absolute best violinist in the world, playing a perfectly tuned Stradivarius, but if you're playing in a vacuum where there is no air to carry the sound, there is no music.
And then there's the driver versus network analogy, which I think makes it a bit more concrete.
This helps ground the mystical language a bit. Think of part 1 as learning to drive a vehicle. You learn to steer, you learn to hit the brakes, you learn to read the dashboard indicators. That's self-regulation. That's internal attunement.
But you can be a phenomenal driver and still be totally lost in a new city.
Exactly. You can be the most emotionally regulated, mindful, embodied driver on the road, but if you don't know where you are going or how the roads connect, it doesn't matter. Part 2 is about connecting to the GPS and the broader traffic network.
Seeing the bigger picture.
It's realizing you are a node in a much larger, highly complex system of intelligence. You aren't just a lone, isolated car driving aimlessly on an empty road.
This seems like a massive shift in mindset. It almost requires throwing out everything we just learned.
It is the core shift. We are moving from internal attunement, asking, how do I work, to external alignment, asking, what am I connected to?
And the nature of the challenge shifts, too. It's no longer just about practicing discipline.
No, the time for strict discipline is over. Discipline is for the instrument. Discipline keeps the strings tuned and the brass polished. The new challenge, the challenge of part 2, is surrender. It's about trust without proof.
Trust without proof?
Yes, it's trusting the GPS routing even when you personally can't see the final destination yet. It's trusting the larger flow of traffic instead of trying to force your way through it.
I have to admit, that is honestly pretty scary.
It is terrifying to the ego. The ego absolutely loves the audit phase. It loves the illusion of control provided by the user interface. The ego says, if I just check all these boxes on my habit tracker, I win the game of life.
Right. I did my steps. I'm a good person.
Exactly. But to step into the operating system, to step into the broader network, requires letting go of that illusion of control. It requires a deep, humbling realization that you are not the one generating the life force. You are just the one hosting it.
Wow. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the profound transition from part 1 to part 2, let's go back to that 3 a.m. moment.
Let's do that.
The traveler is sitting at the kitchen table. The city outside is completely quiet. The fridge is humming in the background. And their heart is just beating steadily without being asked.
That realization right there is the key to the next phase. The realization of, I don't have to make the force happen. I just have to tune the receiver.
It's incredibly humbling. And at the same time, it's intensely liberating.
It is a massive relief. It means you don't have to carry the entire weight of the world on your shoulders. You just have to carry your own aliveness.
I want to leave you, the listener, with this final provocative thought. It's drawn from a concept mentioned right at the end of the text, the threshold song and the idea of the handler of handlers.
It's the perfect place to land our discussion today.
You have spent all this time building the vessel. You have painstakingly tuned the instrument. You have audited your life, your money, your attention. Now, the final question is,
are you willing to stop trying to conduct the orchestra? Are you willing to step down from the podium and simply let the music play through you?
Because that's the ultimate difference between playing the music and actually being the music.
Precisely. Part 2 isn't about learning a bunch of new life hack tricks.
Yeah.
It's about discovering what has been quietly running the show all along.
And on that note, we'll leave you standing right at the threshold. Thanks for diving deep with us into these chapters. We'll see you on the other side.
See you there.